Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and we received several really good questions this week. I'm picking out a handful, about a half a dozen really good ones, try and cover a whole bunch of topics here. So let's dive right into it. First one comes from Red Raider KA, one of my favorite posters on the board, of course. He asks, what excites me the most about Coach Joe McGuire, of course, the head football coach, and what worries me the most about Coach McGuire? Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of things to like about Joey McGuire. First off, just the fact his relationships throughout the state, his ability to recruit, the way he's put together the staff that, obviously has really good recruiting ties in itself. But also, I mean, I've talked to some insiders, non-tech people, but some reporters who are familiar with a lot of guys on the staff, and they talk about just what great coaches these guys are from a developmental standpoint. So it's not just that these guys are a bunch of recruiters, but they can coach these players up too. So, I mean, the level of excitement that McGuire has brought to the program in terms of when he goes out, it seems like he's everywhere. He's at a baseball game, he's at a concert, he's at this or that basketball game. He's all over town, and everywhere he goes, people love him, and I understand it. I'm a huge Joey McGuire fan too. So there are a lot of things to like about Joey McGuire and him being the head football coach at Texas Tech. I think he's a great fit. I mean, right now Texas Tech has the number 2 recruiting class in the country for the 2023 class. And I really like what I've seen from him in spring ball too. Very hands-on coach. He bounces around from position group to position group. He's talking with us media folks. He's talking. He's got high school coaches and of course recruits in town. He's it's almost like he's cloned. Like there's 2 or 3 of them out there on the practice fields at a time. So there's a lot to be excited about. Now, what I'm worried about the most, and I'm really not, because I have actually seen him coach. Now, I was at the high school level, but he hasn't been a head coach at the collegiate level. So if there was one thing that I would point at that, I don't even want to say worries me, but that would be the most, is that he hasn't. Now, I mean, he coached under Matt Rule. He just had him here for a coach's clinic. His dad was a head coach, I believe at the high school level, but still. He's a Hall of Fame high school head coach. I've seen the way he coaches in game. I've covered high school games that he coached. So I'm very confident in his ability, but we just have not seen it at this level. So if I was to point to one thing, and this is really the only thing I could come up with, it would be the fact that he is inexperienced as a head coach at the collegiate level. That would be it. The next question comes from Cajun Raider, who says, it's still early, but who do I think Tech's 3 best basketball portal transfers will be? He says one's probably already in the bag, which he's right. But he wants to know who those 3 will be. Well, you said it. It's still so early. I mean, there are guys that are going to be in the portal who aren't yet, that we can't possibly know, that Tech will target and go after and probably end up signing. So, it's very early to answer that question. But I can say, there are 3 guys that, really excited about. Demarion Williams, who actually just signed, transferred from Gardner-Webb, averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, shot almost 40% from deep, 80% from the free throw line, is known as a good defender. He's the classic athletic wing in this system that we've seen over the last handful of years. He's a perfect fit for Coach Adams' system, so what a great addition he is. I will say he does seem to be more of an efficient shooter, at least at the level he was at Gardner-Webb, than some of the guys we've seen that have been those athletic wing types. Another guy who's actually in town this week is Tyreek Key. Key is a floor general point guard type from Indiana State, averaged over 17 points, a couple assists, 5 rebounds, that kind of player. Could do a little bit of everything. He's obviously more of a scoring point guard or scoring guard, but he missed all last season recovering from a shoulder injury, but was a really good player in 2020-21 for Indiana State, and that would be a huge addition. That Texas Tech could use another guard like in Demarion Williams in terms of a wing defender, a guard who's more of a ball handler, a floor general type in Key, and then they could use some size. And I want to look at this. I've been looking at practicing in my head while I've been talking about the other guys, but I want to make sure I get this right. Fardal's Amak. That's my West Texan or Texan attempt. Fardal's Amek is a 6'11" center out of Utah Valley. And he averaged, 19 points and almost 14 rebounds a game. He recently, Tech's been recruiting for a while. Austin Massey's been all over all these recruitments, but he's been all over his recruitment. And he recently named Texas Tech in his top 5, and with really good company, along with Gonzaga, Iowa, Washington, and Texas. The Evil Empire, to many of y'all out there, of course. So those are 3 guys that Tech are heavily recruiting. Now, look, they're recruiting several guys. I mean, there's tons of information out there. Austin has tons of information in the transfer portal thread, in the Insider about who Tech's going after. But those 3 guys seem like, or at least the closest to committing, and the guys that Tech's really devoted a lot of time and energy to recruiting. So, what they bring to me is obvious. Floor general, a wing, and then some size inside, which Tech needs to replace. They lost a lot of size this year. So those are the 3 guys I would mention at this point. But 2 months from now, I could have a completely different answer for you. All right, the next question comes from Texan44. He says, "What's up, JJ? Hope you and Lucas are doing well." And we are. Lucas is doing great. He's making really good grades this year. He's got a bunch of friends. He seems very happy. He's a huge NFL football fan. He likes college football, but he's a huge NFL fan. He's a huge fan of Madden. He can spout off salary cap numbers for most of the teams in the NFL, and he's into the free agency, NFL free agency, like a lot of y'all are in terms of the transfer portal with Texas Tech and football and basketball. So he's pretty fun. It's interesting just to hear him just spout out stuff, almost like Rain Man. All the info he knows and everything, that won't work because of their cap space, this trade or this, he's really into it. But he's doing great. We really appreciate all y'all's support. I appreciate you asking. And speaking of asking, you also had a question about how has the media availability been with the new football regime, and how does it compare to past head coaches? He also has a question about what's the spring talk about around the QB room, and do I think Bailey Zappi would start this year if he was at Tech? Well, those are a lot of questions. First off, to answer your first one, in terms of availability, it's been great. Coach McGuire has been amazing. The last 2 or 3 practices I was at, he came up and fist bumped or shook hands and thanked me for coming out and everything. And I don't know how many practices I've been to at this point, but it's been several, and then we've had media availabilities. My Joe's covered some stuff. With our radio show, The Rockin' Pregame, we've done some really cool stuff. So I have no complaints about media availability at all. It's been amazing. It's on par with how Coach Wells was. Now, Coach Kingsbury, he was young, a young coach. He was nervous. Use the word paranoid, just to be honest, about some of his availability. And they had a different SID, which has a lot to do with it too. The current SID, Matt Dowdy, is, I would just say, in terms of temperament, personality, all that, is perfect to be the Texas Tech Sports Information Director. He does a really great job. He helps us out a lot. I think he's fair with a lot of the media outlets that put in the time. We obviously put in the time with Texas Tech football, and I'm just a huge fan of a lot of the coaches on the staff. I know them. I've known many of them for years. So, I have zero complaints about the availability, the media availability under Joe McGuire. But I have to say, Coach Wells was very open as well with his time. So, yeah, the past 2 regimes have been amazing. It's been the same SID, so I don't think that's a coincidence. And I look forward to continuing to cover the football program. Now, in terms of the talk around the QB room, really, the thing is that all 3 look good, but none of them have to worry about getting hit. All 3 are bigger. Barrett Morton's 6'2", so he's shorter than Shuck and Donovan Smith, but he is very athletic. He's put on some really good weight. He has as good of an arm as the other 2 guys, and he's probably the best at throwing on the run. So he has the least amount of experience. People keep asking me who I think is going to be the quarterback, and I keep going back and forth between Shuck and Donovan Smith. They bring different things, but I think the competition is still ongoing. If I had to say, I guess I'd say Shuck, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Donovan Smith, and I'm gonna get to answer that in a little more detail here later in this mailbag. But your last question, as good as these guys are, I do think Bailey Zappi would start because I think he was amazing. I think he has a chance to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's got to get the right team, the right system, and all that. But that guy's really good. He put on a show in Lubbock. He put on a show in a lot of places the last couple of years, both at Houston Baptist and Western Kentucky. Quick release, smart. He's really good at creating time outside the pocket. He's not really, I wouldn't say fast, but he's good. He's very crafty. Just a dang good football player. With his familiarity with Zach Keeley, I would almost guarantee you he would start if he was here, and he would tear it up. All right, next question comes from 78 Tech. He says, this may be a tall order, but how many scholarships did the baseball team give, and how are the scholarships allocated? Well, here, I'm just going to read you the definition because I think that's the best way to do it. These are the rules for Division I baseball. It says, under NCAA rules, a Division I baseball team's 11.7 scholarships, so that's what each team gets, can be divided between a maximum of 27 players. So depends on how they want to do it, but you can divvy up those scholarships to 27 players, but there's 35 cap roster. It says, with all players on athletic scholarship having to receive a minimum of 25% scholarship. So if you're on scholarship, you have to get at least a quarter. And I think they do a lot. They do that with a lot of guys. It may be different from year to year, but that's the gist. You get 11.7 scholarships to divvy up a maximum of 27 players of your 35-player capped roster, but each scholarship player must receive a minimum of a quarter scholarship. So I hope that answers your question. 93 Red says, any word on Kevin Obanor returning? Well, I think that really is like one of the big questions surrounding Texas Tech athletics right now. And I got to tell you, when I was in San Francisco, I heard from someone close to Obanor, that's what I'll say, someone very close to Kevin Obanor, say that he was fully expecting coming back. And he was really excited about it. Now, with all the departures now this offseason and, not really hearing anything from him, I really don't know. Things change for everyone. Just think about your life, how things change, your decisions change. So I'm just as curious as you are about Kevin Obanor and if he comes back. I mean, the guy is literally he's a walking double-double in the NCAA tournament. 6 tournament games, 6 double-doubles. He had some huge games and some Big 12 games for Texas Tech. I think he could play a lot better over the course of a season than he did this past year. I think he could really be featured next year, but he may want to go play pro ball somewhere or maybe even transfer somewhere. I don't know. I'm not sure about the waiver rules and all that and where he's at with his eligibility, if he'd have to sit or not. I don't know his situation, but exactly. But I think that's a huge decision on whether he comes back or not in terms of for Texas Tech next year. It's not make or break, but it sure would help, keep the culture going. He's a very talented player. He'd be one of the better players in the Big 12 next year. So, I'm just as curious as you as what Kevin's going to decide. I've heard from people who swear he's gone, people who swear he's coming back, people that I trust. So I'm a little wary of saying one way or the other which way I'm leaning, but it's definitely one of the big questions surrounding Texas Tech athletics right now. All right, the final question comes from Red Raider Stat, and I told you I'd come back to this question or talk about the quarterback some more later. He says, with Shuck and Morton being a possible 1-2 punch at quarterback, is there any likelihood that Smith will move to another position to take advantage of his athleticism? And I got to be honest, I almost don't like the question, but I wanted to answer this because I know there's some people out there that think that. Donovan Smith is a quarterback. Could he play other positions? Sure, he played receiver and he did it well at a high level of competition in high school as a junior out in Las Vegas. But he's a quarterback, and I think he might start for you. I mean, he won that big game. He had a great performance against Iowa State. He had a couple of great games. He had a great game against Mississippi State. He's a dang good football player who could win you a lot of, not just football player, but dang good quarterback who could win you a lot of games next year and in the coming years. I mean, he's 6'5", he's like 235 pounds, he's a tank. And I was standing next to him the other day in practice. He's just a monster. Now, Tyler Shuck, same thing. Great size, Guy has a cannon for an arm. I mean, he does. He was throwing like 30-yard outs. Not 30-yard outs, but I mean, well, it was 30 yards because it was across the field from the opposite hash into the wind, and it was like the wind wasn't like gusting West Texas spring wind, and it wasn't bothering at all. I mean, he has a cannon. His arm, all the tangibles aren't a problem. Really, a lot of the intangibles, because he's a good leader, he's a good dude. I mean, if you spend 5 minutes with Tyler Shuck, you're going to like him. Almost guarantee it. But how is he at reading defenses? How is he, as they say, when the bullets are flying and there's, the oncoming rush and all that? There's been mixed results. There's been some really good results, but there's been some questionable results. So both of them have won big games, Power 5 games. So you know that. You have a winner, a guy who can win you a lot of games in either one of those guys. Then there's Bear Morton, man, and he looks really good. I saw him play a couple games in high school in person. I've watched him throughout practice these last couple off seasons, and he's gotten bigger. He's got the quickest release out of all of them. He's probably the best at throwing on the run, though all three of them are very good on the run. He's not as big as them, but there's a lot of things to like about Baron Morton. I think he is seriously being considered for the spot. Now, I do think it's actually going to come down to Shuck and Smith, but Morton is making a push. I think he will be a multi-year starter at some point at quarterback for Texas Tech. So I'm really excited about him. But I just want to say, the only reason I really decide, okay, I'm going to answer this question is because don't count out Donovan Smith. I really don't understand why you would do that, especially after him winning some big games for you last year. He has a strong arm. I've seen him put some zip on the ball. He throws probably the most catchable ball out of all three of them, which is saying something because all three of them throw good balls. He's a good quarterback. He's a winner. He's a gamer kind of dude, where he might struggle for even a half, but then come up with 2 or 3 big plays, whether it be a run or a big throw. Like that throw and that corner route to Miles Price against Iowa State on 3rd and whatever it was a money, awesome quarterback throw. So don't count out Donovan Smith. He might start. And I'm going to tell you right here, I, for one, will not be disappointed if he starts next year. I think he's very good. But I like all three of the quarterbacks. Like Joe McGuire saying, I don't think it's hyperbole when he's saying he's got one of the best quarterback rooms in the country. And he's got Zach Kitley, who's won all these awards for being an great offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, obviously learned from Coach Kingsbury, among others. So I feel very good about quarterback, and I feel very good about all three, not just Shuck and Morton. But, hey, that's just my opinion. You asked me. So I'm going to do it. I almost said I respect the question, but I'm not going to do that. I understand where you're coming from. I disagree with it. But quarterback, for the first time since Mahomes was here, I'm really not worried about it. I feel like even if one or even 2 of the guys go down, I feel like the third guy can win you some football games. So that is quite the luxury to have. But man, great questions this week. I'm really glad we're back here after a hiatus with the mailbag. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you watching. And until next time.